Hello, everyone, and welcome to Archaeoviking. Today, I have gathered several archaeologists whom I know personally to discuss a matter that is rather important and ever pressing, unfortunately, in the field of archaeology, and that is the prevalence of looting. Specifically, we are discussing today the usefulness of social media in uh, not necessarily completely stopping looting activities, but at least hampering them to a large degree. Um, Joining me today is a regular collaborator, Morgan Kinney, and then also a another on and off again regular collaborator and fellow friend of mine and Morgan's, Mary Chichen, I believe. I do apologize if I butchered your
Oh,
last
you got
name.
it right.
Yeah.
Rhymes with kitchen.
Yeah. And then also joining us is so full disclosure, all three of the people that me, Morgan, and Mary, we have worked or are still working in CRM or CRM adjacent fields of archaeology. Joining us is Dr. John Inadino, who one has worked in CRM for many decades, and also is now a professor at Eastern Kentucky. Is it Eastern Kentucky? Yeah, Eastern Kentucky University. Uh, and so he has the experience of both working in CRM and in academia, and also has worked extensively with looted archaeological sites, which is why I brought him in here. In fact, a couple of years ago, he and I talked about uh, him dealing extensively with looted sites in Kentucky. So that's also part of why I approached him, is because he again had experience with that. So with that in mind, we have a few talking points that we first want to address. The first one I think is a pretty big important one because a lot of people tend to mix up some things, and that is what constitutes or defines archaeological looting. And why is that important? Because as Morgan and Mary can attest, every time we have told people, hey, you're picking up an artifact or, digging a hole in an archaeological site is looting, we've had some degree of, no, it's not looting. And then they try to equate it to like looting a TV from a department store during a riot or something like that. And it's
Right.
like, it's not necessarily the same thing.
Or
Uh,
worse, they try to counter it with
yeah.
"Oh, but you guys can do it."
Yeah, or but you guys can do it. So that is the first sort of the discussion. What constitutes archaeological looting? Um, who wants to take this first? I think we can all answer it to generally the same degree, but who wants to take this first?
I'll jump in.
Uh,
So do you want the legalistic definition of looting versus pilfering? Because
I
the
think I
there
think
there there
both.
are some
Yeah,
legal differences.
there are. Yeah.
Looting is removing of an archaeological material out of from its original context, out of context, whereas
Hmm.
pilfering or theft is
Hmm.
subsequently taking it. Like what was it back in the 80s when a museum in Arkansas
Hmm.
got looted and a few dozen Mississippian pots got stolen. And I think actually a few years ago, some of them got repatriated. They were
Yeah.
found, but they made it to the
Interesting.
antiquities market.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's pretty much about it. It's the deliberate taking of archaeological artifacts or something related to archaeological sites from an archaeological site, usually through the destruction of said site. Of course, it could always include and has included people who go to actual archaeological digs, and so they don't destroy the site, but they end up taking a piece of pottery or two, or a projectile point or something like that home. Um, Now there is some gray area there because, of course, some states like Missouri and to a certain degree, like here in Georgia and such, will let you, as long as they can maintain the data and like analyze it and copy down the data in the context, will let you keep it. But that's like a gray area, and there are caveats and such to that involve a lot more discussion than just defining what looting is. So,
John, I
uh,
find it interesting that the example that you gave was looting from a museum,
mhm,
because my thought of archaeological looting is usually like shoveling, digging in the ground,
Mhm.
taking stuff like
Yeah.
right from the archaeological site.
Mhm.
And I guess I don't always consider from a museum. I mean, for
Mhm.
example, like from the Louvre or right after the Louvre, there was a
Mhm.
museum in California, and I don't remember what it was. There were items stolen from a
Yeah.
museum.
Hundreds. Yeah.
Yeah, right after the Louvre. So yeah, I
Mhm.
like that you brought that up because I don't often think of that as
Mhm.
archaeological looting, but it is.
It is, yeah.
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 And something I always include with looting, though it technically counts as vandalism, but it's still looting, in my opinion, unless is like the vandalism of petroglyphs and other
Yeah.
archaeological and historical sites. Here in Georgia, we had that a few years ago, where up in North Georgia, there are these petroglyphs called the Track Rock Gap petroglyphs that are dated between like the late, I believe, like the late Archaic through the late Woodland, and such, and people snuck onto it and spray painted some of that, and that's been happening a lot out west in Utah, Colorado, etc. places. And while
And
that's
not to
not,
mention,
yeah,
people have actually taken
yeah,
Yep.
petroglyphs and rock art from the
yep,
rock itself,
yep,
like saw cut it out and taken it.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
yes,
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
looting.
exactly.
But yes, the vandalism is also looting, I
Yeah, it
consider.
is very much looting, and I've had people argue, no, it's not. It's like it is. It's you can find it on the SAA's website, Society for American Archaeology. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you can find it on a number of list of sites.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's essentially what looting is. And again, there are caveats because generally, unfortunately, in the United States, private land is not necessarily legally considered looting, but it is still archaeological looting.
Still looting.
I've had people
So
try to
yeah,
argue that it's like, oh, it's not illegal, so it's not
always.
looting. But it's like it's
Mhm.
no, it's looting whether you like it or not, whether it's legal or not. Um, it's like a soldier is still murdering somebody, whether they're legally doing it or not.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so it's not the same thing. But unfortunately, private land does exist. But again, there are still caveats to that because in most states, navigable waterways are not
Mhm.
counted, and so whether you think if you're
Yep.
picking it up out of a flowing river that you can sail a canoe down,
Kayak
yeah, kayak or well, yeah, kayak canoe, yeah,
draws a minimum, or
yeah,
yeah, it draws
yeah,
a minimum of 6 inches.
yeah, exactly,
If it draws a minimum of 6 inches of water, that waterway is considered navigable, and
hmm
therefore the waterways fall under either the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers on a federal level or the
hmm
state,
yep.
usually
Oh,
under.
here's one for you. As an avid kayaker in the Commonwealth
Yeah,
of Kentucky,
yeah.
if your feet are on the bottom of the waterway, you're on the land of somebody who over whose land that water flows. And
Oh,
so if you're kayaking down Elkhorn Creek and you get out to
hmm
have a picnic, if your feet are standing on the ground, you're on somebody's property and you are trespassing.
hmm
interesting.
So the state doesn't have jurisdiction under those waterways,
That's
uh, which
interesting.
I found shocking. But
Yeah. Well, and then you also
So
have,
no high
yeah,
water concerns.
yeah.
Mhm.
No high water concerns is what he asked. Uh,
And you can go in Montana, you can go 20 feet above the high water mark on someone's private land, and you cannot be charged with trespassing. And the whole
mhm,
thought behind that is if you are in a boat and you flip over and you
Mhm.
have to get out of the water and the water is high, 20
Mhm.
feet might be the
mhm,
distance you have to travel to be safely out of the sweep of water.
mhm,
So they can't get on your case if you wash up on somebody's riverfront property
Hmm.
next to their burn pit or their gazebo.
mhm.
It prevents you from being charged for, not dying in the river.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes
It's the public
sense.
access too,
Yeah,
because
but
that's one of the things that you see here, landowner wise, with all of the rich people showing up to
yeah,
buy land in Montana. They don't
yeah,
want you to walk on their land to go fishing in the
mhm,
waterway that they don't actually own.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you can walk either below the high water mark for access or above the high water mark if you have to get out of the water.
mhm.
So,
For
Yeah,
artifact collectors in Kentucky, creek walking is a
it's a
big
big,
thing.
it's a big
And
thing here too.
so
Yeah.
So if you're creek walking, you need to be very aware of whose creek you're walking in because
Hmm.
that's not state land, that's not municipal land, unless of course it is.
Well,
It's private property. So
Yeah.
then it
um,
makes it almost easier to go after somebody for that
Yeah.
technically because it
yes,
ceases to be looting and becomes flat out
theft
theft,
Yeah,
and
theft. Yeah.
trespassing. Yeah.
Yeah.
people can't seem to get through their heads that
Yeah.
looting is theft, which is why when you brought up the vandalism,
Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, I kind of view it, and this is just me,
Yeah.
is that all vandalism is looting,
Yeah.
not all, or all looting is vandalism,
Yeah.
not all vandalism is looting.
Yeah, and that's fair. Yeah.
Because if somebody spray paints something nasty on the side of my house, that's vandalism. They
Yeah.
didn't take anything,
Mm.
but in respect to cultural sites, whose their whole importance is the visual aspect of it.
Yeah.
That that does apply. So
Yeah, exactly. And I will, Dr. Andy, you mentioned the Kentucky rivers. It also reminds me of South Carolina because South Carolina is a little unique in that those waterway rules don't, for whatever reason, don't apply. Uh, and also looting it's a lot easier to get away with in South Carolina than others. I don't understand why. It's a weird
I
thing.
know why.
Why?
No one cares.
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah,
And that
fair.
actually goes
Yeah,
into something that we're going to
yeah,
talk about a little bit later. But
yeah, exactly. And that's, yeah. But yeah, so those are basically all the forms that looting can take, stealing from a museum. Museums can be, can and have been party to looting. Uh,
mm,
and I would also, so they can be party to that, but it involves, the deliberate removal or destruction of an archaeological site and taking the artifacts. Can also involve, in my opinion, refusal to repatriate artifacts,
Yeah, I didn't think that.
which,
Mhm.
especially under NAGPRA and other
Mm.
laws. Um,
Oh, recently had a big
yeah.
case in Kentucky about that Blue Licks
Hmm.
state resort park. There was a concerted social media and print and
Yeah.
news video media campaign against the repatriation of
Hmm.
artifacts from 200, I think it's 214 or 217 artifacts out of several hundred, that many of whom have clear associations with burials from
Oh, wow.
Fort Ancient, very famous one,
Yeah.
Fox Farm, which has
Yeah.
been heavily investigated in the last 20 years by the University of Kentucky and the Kentucky Archaeology Survey. Anyway, long story short, smear campaigns and newspapers.
Hmm.
There were state house hearings about this, and it was just the parks and the
Hmm.
SHPO complying with with NAGPRA
Yeah.
and the repatriation of these
Hmm.
remains. And it's actually I've had my archaeology in the law class. We're doing our class project on repatriation
Good.
on the
Yeah.
saga because there's testimony, there's legal documents, and there's this trail of information on social media, in newspapers, and in
Hmm.
the local TV news
Yeah.
about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
It's
then, yeah.
that's a lot.
Well, and then there's also, I believe it's like the Colorado Museum of Art or whatever that's refusing to repatriate Tlingit artifacts to the Tlingit Nation, despite them repeatedly
Mhm.
saying, "Hey, we just want these 11 fucking artifacts,
Yeah.
give them back."
Berkeley is doing the same. Berkeley has a
Yeah,
lot of human remains that they
yeah.
refuse to repatriate right
Uh,
now.
and I know the Smithsonian is like a lot of conspiracy theorists like, oh, the Smithsonian, but a little bit the Smithsonian. Like one of my mentors, Dr. James Langford, of a few years back, he was because he's working hand in hand with the Muskogee Creek Nation to build a new, bigger, better museum at the Etowah Mounds, where the Muskogee Creek Nation has a controlling uh owner, it has the majority control ownership in the stuff. But he was talking about how he was visiting the Smithsonian Museum and like in Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian, things like that, and he was finding artifacts from the Etowah Mounds here in Georgia that nobody knew were excavated. or were even at the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian was just, I don't want to say hiding, but I guess they just never returned them when they were supposed to be because they were burial related, and things like that. And then
Neglected to
also,
keep the collections together.
yeah, exactly, yep. And then also, I know somebody at Moundville in Alabama. I talked to somebody because at one point in time, a couple years back, I visited there for the second time. I'd visited there before, but I visited there for the second time, and many of the artifacts were gone because they were associated with burial. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But I talked with one of the archaeologists who worked on that. They're like, yeah, we got sent out there to force them essentially to repatriate the stuff because they were refusing to repatriate it. I'm just like, ooh, that's good to know. Of course, I will not name who they are so that, they don't get in trouble. But like, that's essentially what happened is they were like, yeah, we had to essentially force them to do it. And I'm like, that's not fun to think about. But that in itself is a type of looting, you
Yeah.
know? So,
So with that being said, though, can we also acknowledge that in the past, archaeology itself has
oh,
been looting, and
of
even
course,
probably a lot of
100%.
it today? I just want to say that out,
Of
outright,
course.
so nobody
Oh,
thinks that we're just like, oh no,
yeah, no,
archaeology is totally correct and that everybody
no.
else is wrong.
No, it's 100%. I mean, and like so much looting was done just under the guise that like of course, a lot of it was done in Europe, but like thinking about here in the United States, so much of it was done under the guise of the mound builder myth, where it's like we're trying to prove that the Europeans or the Jews or the Vikings at one point, Atwater was
Anyone
like,
but
Caleb Atwater was like, oh, the Hindus, and it's just like, and they were just destroying mounds to
Mhm.
and taking shit to find this stuff, and then of course there's Heinrich Schliemann and a whole nother slew of people who looted and
He's
destroyed
my buddy.
archaeological sites. Yes. So yeah, so of course, archaeology is not, its hands are not clean. In fact, a few years ago, there was a serum firm, I think in California, that got in trouble for, you know, like for not following NAGPRA guidelines and, things like that. So, yeah, so archaeology is not blameless, but the thing is we acknowledge that there's issues and that's
Neither is
why
the
we try to fix
profession
it.
of
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I
Everything
think,
right.
yeah.
develops as we
Yeah.
go along.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the reason for these types of talks. Okay, so I guess, because we covered really the first two talking points I wanted to do, what constitutes slash defines archaeological looting and what forms can it take. Now, I think it's important to point out, like, why is it important that we talk about this? How does it affect the descendant communities? Which there can be a whole slew of a number of ways. I mean, right off the bat, Native American, cultural items have been taken. Their culture has been attempted to be erased, has been appropriated. They've repeatedly told us, please don't do that. You're destroying, our ancestors' burials, among other things. You're destroying our sacred sites. There's the looting of, like even to put the Native American, part of it to the side, descendant African American communities, their burials. I mean, there's the African burial ground controversy in New York back in the 90s. That was a big issue connected to that. I mean, there are issues connected to that down here in the Gullah Geechee corridor in Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina. It's like Asian American, descendant communities, Chinese American burial grounds, you can name a whole list and they've
Yeah.
all been, looted at some point in time and it destroys their heritage. Their graves are
It
ignored
destroys
and
our
just,
heritage
yeah,
too.
exactly. It
That's the
destroys
thing,
their
is it, and
heritage.
that's the
Yeah.
thing that
Yeah.
I think there shouldn't be a separation
No, I
between
agree.
anybody's
No,
heritage based on ethnicity or
no.
from whom they descend, because no matter what, archaeological sites for whatever
Mhm.
focus those sites are have been looted
Yeah.
or are continually looted
Yeah. Oh boy.
for things of importance. I
Yeah.
just saw our favorite friend,
Oh, which one?
Endless Search,
Oh,
the
he's
other
back.
day.
He's
No.
back. Oh my
Oh yeah,
God.
I had to laugh
Oh
because I
God.
watched this dumbass put a fused fucking cannonball that he found on a battlefield site somewhere in North Carolina, in a pot of boiling water.
What?
I wasn't rooting for the pot of boiling water in the slightest the entire time I saw it.
No.
However, the first time I ever encountered this kid on social media,
Yeah.
he was defrosting a belt buckle
Yeah.
from a battlefield site. And
Yeah.
last I checked, if a body's too mangled, they bury it with everything it has on it. Which
Yeah.
means this could have been a full burial looted
Mm-hmm.
for a belt buckle. But
Yeah.
there's burials out here that
Mm-hmm.
belong to cavalry soldiers,
Mm-hmm.
dig up their swords, dig up their
Yeah.
buttons, dig up their rifle if it's with them. So
Yep.
a lot of the community, I mean, all the communities have a legitimate and valid point here when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to this is damaging.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit more of a focus on it's not that big of a deal if it's not Euro-American.
Yeah. And yeah. Well, and even then there's seems because like I lived for many years near the Chickamauga battlefield and I never saw it, but I talked with an archaeologist by the name of Honor Camp, and he was like, "Yeah, we would catch them out there, like looters out there at night with like night vision goggles, metal detecting the." And this is one of the biggest battlefields in the U.S. Civil War,
Yep.
and it's the American Civil War, and they're looting it, and they do it all the time, and I think that's a good point, because like burials for that as well. And that's also a point I was going to touch on is because unfortunately it's like it's not just that, it's like they don't seem to care about anything. It's like it's mine is what it seems to be,
Or
or
it's
yeah,
valuable
yeah, or it's
because
valuable, yeah.
some of the worst looting events
Hmm.
are surprisingly always related to meth.
Yeah. And also simultaneously we don't know what we're talking about, yeah, because we totally don't know the difference between a fucking canoe and a tree.
Oh,
Yes.
that guy was
God,
brilliant.
God.
No, one
What,
of my
yeah,
my program lead here on the
yeah,
forest, he was like, we would go on these projects on the Mark Twain,
yeah.
and they would, the cops 40 miles away would smash down a door and
Hmm.
bust up a meth cookhouse, and
Yeah.
there are 5-gallon buckets upon
Hmm.
buckets of pottery fragments and arrowheads
Of
and
course.
projectile points and human remains because these guys are going out and looting sites. I mean, just digging, and I
Yeah.
mean, they're coming off, or they're in the middle of their high when they're doing it, so they're in places that probably are never been recorded, but boy, they're
Yeah.
digging them.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is that if you can get $25 for a spear point,
Hmm.
you know how much money is in those buckets. And
Yeah.
one of the driving forces behind it is not only the it's cool gimmies,
Yeah.
it's the financial component. There was that big case in the Four Corners
Yeah.
a couple years ago where a whole bunch of like high in society folks were caught up in this massive looting archaeological sting, and one of the doctors who was involved, who was paying methies to go out and dig for him,
Of course.
it made the news that he was not going to be going or not facing charges for all of this
Uh,
stuff, and that's
uh,
because he walked into the garage and took his own ticket
oh, wow.
over the whole thing
Yeah.
because it was that serious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
that's
on
why
that,
there are
yeah.
laws against it.
Yep. On a similar note, there was God. This is one of my favorite stories to tell of how stupid some looters can be. There was a phase one I was on somewhere in Georgia. Of course, I'm not going to say exactly where, but somewhere in Georgia. It was me and one other guy. And as we were digging the shovel test, this guy randomly stops with his car, and of course he's like, "Oh, what are y'all looking for?" And yada yada yada. And we're like, "Yeah, most of the time." We tend to like be like, oh, we're with the DOT. We're just doing a soil survey because we know they're going to try to figure out like what artifacts we're finding. But this guy, unprompted, decides to start showing us some of the artifacts he stole and looted. And he admits to one having looted known archaeological sites on federal land in the area, but having also looted burials.
Oh
And then he
no.
proceeds to drive off before I can, figure out how to get his information. Well, funnily enough, about an hour later, we're stopping for lunch at this diner and we're eating there. Guess who walks in? And so I walk up to him and I'm like, hey buddy, I'm really interested in the stuff you found, And I'm like, can I get a look at more of your stuff? He's like, yeah. And he gave me his name, number, his address, his email,
Perfect.
and then I proceeded
Good.
to shunt all of that to the state archaeologist and was like, "Hey, this guy admitted to all of this stuff. Admitted to looting these archaeological sites on federal land. Admitted to looting burials. Here you go." It's like,
Excellent.
yeah, but it's just
Excellent.
like, that's how stupid they are. Like you don't like, and they, it's just like, yeah. But yeah, because it
But
could, destroy the heritage. There are so many archaeological sites that have been just obliterated by looting. Um,
right. So I
and
wanted
it's
to say, going back to like talking about the descendants,
yeah,
and how it's harmful to them. My
yeah,
experience on social media talking
yeah,
about looting is when I bring up that it's harmful to the indigenous descendants.
yeah,
Unfortunately, I often get somebody in the comments who claims to be indigenous
yeah,
and says, "Oh, don't worry about it. I don't care," or speaks for them as a whole and says, "Oh no,
yeah,
I don't care about that. Go ahead and take it." And that can be really frustrating. It's really hard.
yeah,
So I kind of stopped making that argument as much as I've made the argument of how it destroys the archaeological record,
yeah,
how we lose out on the context, on the data, and archaeologists would take all of that context and data and share it with the public,
yeah.
whereas a looter is going to take it for themselves and nobody
Hmm.
else gets to,
Yeah,
roll in any of that.
yeah, and that's how the argument I've generally tried to do because,
Yeah.
like, for because I recently worked with people whom I know who claim they haven't done it in decades. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But they said that they had projectile points that they knew the general area that they found them because um, for those of you who are watching, I'm working on a multi-year project where we're doing scanning the chert sources and chert artifacts to try to figure out and match stone sources for stone tools. And so
Hmm.
this was part of that project. Um, and it's just like all of these things were taking from these sites, and we can't get the context back. But when I've had these conversations with them, my exact words are like, "Okay, look," because they're friends of like family members. One is a longtime family friend of my dad's. So I was like, "Look, I'm telling them it's like, look, y'all are one is a friend of one of my close friends is a father of one of my close friends also." And I'm like, "Look, y'all are adults." And so obviously you're gonna do what you want to anyways. Like, however, please don't do this. And then I go into the details of why, the context, and I try to use like the CSI example of like, oh, the murder scene, and if you remove that piece of evidence, kind of thing. And then I also try to like, and I'm like, and a lot of times, the archaeologists will willingly share the stuff with you, and in most states, if it's found on your property, so long as they can, get the data from it and, look at it in the lab in a little bit, they will give it back to you. We recently did that with a phase one where the artifact, it was a privately hired contract where they hired us to do it for a neighborhood they were building. And they're like, yeah, you can take the artifacts and examine them so long as you eventually return them to us. And,
Okay.
but so I try to explain them to that. I'm like, there's that, it can help that. I also love to explain, like, hey, eminent domain is a thing. And one of the few ways that eminent domain won't take your fucking land is if the archaeological sites that are significant are intact. Yeah,
Well, we'll see how far that gets with this administration.
yeah, seriously. Um, but yeah, it can affect a lot of, and it can affect a lot of things. I mean, we had in the '90s, the Kennewick Man, was a big controversy, you know, and with the tribes being like, "Hey, return him, please," and they're like, "No, it's European. He's not Native American." And it turned out, of course, he was Native American, but it's like, uh, yeah. So
Yeah, we just discussed that case in my archaeology of the law class last
yeah,
week,
yeah,
and And in my one of the other classes that I'm teaching,
Mm,
we're discussing
yeah.
anthropological approaches to race, and
Yeah.
the only anthropologists who use race as a concept are forensic anthropologists.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why? Because the consumers of forensic anthropology need racial designations, and so you
Yeah.
end up with
Yep.
Owsley saying
Yeah.
Kennewick Man has Caucasoid features, and the next thing you know,
Hmm.
there are
According to
non-indigenous
who?
peoples
Yeah.
claiming him under
Yeah.
NAGPRA. And
Yeah.
was it I forget which university, I think it might have been Germany,
Yeah.
did, or maybe the Netherlands,
Yeah.
with the permission of the Colville and other descendant communities, sequence of DNA and determines like, oh, the nearest relatives are the
Are the
Colville
Colville.
tribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
34 and something percent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing
Exactly.
that he's
And I
descended
think,
from the same group that's there.
Yeah.
was it 2017 or 18 that the remains were actually
Yeah.
legally,
I think
Yep.
that it's
It
something
was
like that.
2018
I
that
think
Yeah.
that's
the
right,
Army Corps of
finally,
Engineers finally
Yeah.
handed over the remains.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that
Exactly.
and I talked about that in one of my videos because the technology of being able to sequence that genome and
Hmm.
get that detail was not available in 1994 to
No.
Hmm.
2010 even.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So everybody's saying, "Hey, he's an ancestor. We need him to come back." There were
Hmm.
multiple tribes
Yeah.
in the Pacific Northwest claiming him.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Somebody playing the devil's advocate going, well, we don't know which one is which. Somebody's going to lose their mind if we hand him to somebody to,
Yeah.
the Northern California branch of the Paiute or,
Mm.
the Nez Perce or the Colville. And that was regardless a nasty situation because, of course, you had some white supremacy group out of Minnesota going, he belonged to us
Yeah, and there's
because
still
he looks
people
like
doing
Patrick
that.
Stewart in the
Yeah.
claymation,
Hmm.
which is like, I don't know how you get that other than the clay is the sort
Yeah.
of color. I mean,
Yeah.
you take all of the hair off of somebody and you have just features with no color. I mean,
Hmm.
he looked like Ben Kingsley if you really wanted to kind
Yeah.
of just line. But
Yeah.
in the case of that, yeah, it was relatively recent.
Yeah. Well, and then of course, as an aside, now it's that still is white supremacists are still trying to claim that, especially with the fucking Salutrian hypothesis that just won't go the fuck away.
Well, it's because somebody wrote a book and that
I
somebody
know.
has letters
I
after their name.
I know.
Um,
And they
and I
yeah,
can't remember who it is.
I don't remember either, but yeah, they
Stanford and Bradley.
yeah, Danford and yeah.
Dennis
Yeah.
Stanford and Bruce Bradley. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, it won't go away. And white supremacists have latched onto it and they've turned it into a whole Atlantis thing and basically done what Graham Hancock has done and copied the mound builder myth, like to a T.
Graham Hancock is my buddy too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
We go
God.
way back.
Yeah. We go way back. We're not going to talk about him. We've
We're
talked
not.
about him
We're not.
at length. Okay. So that leads into the next thing. So how have archaeologists traditionally combated looting? Um, difficultly, very, very difficultly, not easily. Uh, um, Generally it's the same, in my experience, it's the same methods that I've always used. It's like, it's like try to educate the public. That's the best way. Call people out on it. That's
Yeah.
generally before using social media, and even then, and we'll get to mine, Mary's, and Morgan's like sort of beginning into why we're having this conversation in a little bit, but like before then,
Birth of
it's been
Frankenstein's monster over here.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's essentially it's the same thing. It's like, oh, alert the state archaeologist or the authorities.
Hmm.
Tell them don't loot, try to educate them. That's generally the way we've done it for a long time. And unfortunately, some archaeologists have helped people loot, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
another issue that has run into, especially a lot of the people who were the archaeologists before, before, say, Dr. Inadino or my mentor James Langford became archaeologists. They were all arrowhead pickers themselves, and then they
Hmm.
have since retired and have gone back to their nefarious deeds a lot
Or
of the time.
died.
Or died. Not
like
always,
the guy
yeah.
that
Yeah.
like the guy that I have to thank my entire program for
Yeah.
existing.
Yeah,
When he
exactly.
passed, it was discovered all the things he had in his house,
Yeah.
and I
Wow.
mean included a Peruvian child mummy as a coffee
Mm-hmm.
table.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Which
Yeah.
that was like the one thing that the family didn't donate to the university,
Oh my God.
which is like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I've seen people who were allowed by archaeologists to take celts and all kinds of things, and it's just like, oh my God. And actually, I want to turn this over to Dr. Andino. Having done this the longest, how have you in your, in CRM and otherwise combated looting? To what degree?
I mean, you say combat looting like there's really anything that I can do
Yeah,
besides protect
exactly.
the individuals that I meet.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I mean, I mean, for example, on mitigation projects, it really helps to go and talk to the neighbors. Like if you're going to be in a place for a while, like months for
hmm
mitigation, there was one the first time we mitigated the site for the gas pipeline.
yeah,
That went off without a hitch.
yeah,
You know, hundreds of features, cool archaeology, great radiocarbon dates. The second time we mitigated the site, a different part of the site for a different development, we got looted because
yeah,
by that time everybody knew, and it was also kind of near a big looting area down in
hmm
Tampa near the bypass canal, and
yeah,
we come to work one morning and there's caverns in the sidewalls of all of our excavation units.
yeah,
We saw the trail where they came and parked at a trailer park that was across the way from the place, and we saw their trail. They anyway. Um, Other than trying to work with the landowners and neighbors to try to keep
yeah,
eyeballs on the site, or nowadays you have all kinds of cameras that you can install.
mhm.
We
yeah,
didn't have those
yeah,
back in
yeah,
2005.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
um, but or later on in 2006 7. So there is a lot to be said about being in a high traffic, high profile
yeah,
area with lots of people being nosy, is that you can't get away with it.
yeah,
And so absent stakeholders
yeah,
who have a vested interest in seeing that the thing doesn't get destroyed, get looted. There's really not a lot you can do.
yeah. That's generally, yeah,
Like on a site as you're working on it.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, yeah, it's difficult, and even in the more remote areas, like where I've
hmm
been doing my field schools in Daniel Boone National Forest. All the sites that I have done field schools on have been looted
yeah,
to one degree or another. And that's kind of my thing now, is that I go to the looted sites and I find the NR eligible elements of
yeah,
those sites, like early agricultural complex
yeah,
plants and features, intact deposits, Kirk components, 11,000 years old beneath looter back dirt.
yeah,
It's there. But how do you keep people from looting those sites when even the archaeology program, the district archaeologists for the forest, how are they going to visit every site?
yeah, exactly,
We're
yeah,
Some of
not,
these are
because that's what I have to do.
yeah,
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 but there's some that are kind of near higher traffic areas that are
Mhm.
easier to get to, so they're easier to monitor. But some of those
Mhm.
sites out in the back country, it's like,
yeah,
I mean, you might see those once every 10 years, maybe.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
And a
yeah.
lot can happen in 10 years.
Yeah, I can
very
speak
true.
to that very well because like there's a project we were worked on actually this previous summer through the fall, and
Mhm.
it's in this big state park. Again, I'm not gonna say where, but like it's a swamp. I will say no, not Okefenokee, but anyways, but it's a swamp. And like we have on our because
There's only one swamp in Georgia.
there's a fuck ton. I promise. It's like there, the field maps, it shows previously recorded sites, and we're of course they're in the project area. So all right, we got to go check them out. Well, we get out there. Most of them are now underwater, and we're like under swamp
Perfect.
water, under lakes, which we're like, okay, cool, they're safe, but we're also like, this means the environment's changed so much since the last
Yep.
time they were here. And then in another area that was like a different swamp that was absolutely fucked over by Hurricane Helene. It was literally impossible to get through. But like there were other sites that were supposedly there, and one was this is another issue. A lot of archaeologists back in the 70s and 80s had weird criteria for what constitutes a site. This one was like, oh, it's a eligible site. And we're digging, we're like, we're not finding anything like at all. And then we talked to one of the PIs. And he's like, hey, let me look at the old site form. And he calls us back. He's like, they found a singular point. He's like, and then they
Yeah.
called that a site. And we're like, that's an isolated find. That's not, we're like, why was this made into like, and then the other sites we found stuff at the other sites, but but that was another example where like, that would have been like, I would have written up that as an isolated find because like, anyway, it's like, so there's that
Bold to
too.
assume that they would fill out the site forms with anything.
Yeah, because anybody who's looked at any kind of site file, like the Nargis, the Georgia one, I was going through it, and like there were some where it was just like, oh, here's a site file, but there's no report written up on it at all, and I'm like, okay, well, I know nothing about the site now. Thank you for not helping me in any way, whoever did this, years ago. So yeah,
My favorite was a site form that was written, and the site itself was a quarry, like a small chert quarry.
yeah.
And the guy wrote, waxed poetical for like
Oh.
4 paragraphs on access. And like he had to abandon his Jeep because, and I quote, the vehicle's constitution would not allow it to go up the road. And when you get to the site form, or you get to the site description, it's quarry. Artifacts observed. Lithics.
Yeah. Or yeah, jeez.
Of what?
Yeah, there
This
was
guy's site
yeah.
forms were so prevalent when I worked at the BLM.
hmm
His middle initial was F. And we would start saying blanking Taylor
Yeah.
on everything.
Yeah.
He's long past, but the point is
Yeah.
that like the site report comes up, the site form comes up for any number of sites that we're looking at in a timber sale or whatever, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
great. So essentially, we're like, well, we have a basic idea of where we're going to relocate a site and record it
Yeah.
because the site record
Mm.
was
Yeah.
paltry at best.
Yeah. And Dr. Anadino, you may know the name I'm about to say in a second, but we run into that a lot with site forms written up by Arthur Kelly. Arthur Kelly had a tendency to not when it write up anything in detail. Like I was trying to look at it, working on a site I was working on. I was trying to say, okay, what artifacts did they find previously? And I found a singular interview. It wasn't even a site form. It was an interview he had with somebody, and they're like, "Oh, what did you find?" It's like, "Oh, I found a few pieces of chert and a few pieces of pottery." It's like that doesn't tell us anything. Like this tells what level,
Mhm.
like what coordinate, nothing. And it's again not even in a site form. It was in an interview he had with somebody. And Arthur Kelly is notorious among a lot of people because we're like, geez, like he was sent out by the UGA and the Georgia Department of Transportation basically everywhere in the 50s and 60s. And so it's unfortunately one of those where it's like trying to decipher what he meant is difficult.
Happens.
Yeah. So, but Dr. Bringing up stakeholders actually brings up into the next section the importance of public archaeology and educating the public on the said importance of archaeology. Something that all of us do to large degrees. I have, in my, of course, I like Morgan here and Mary. We have TikToks where we educate people on TikTok channels where I educate people on archaeology. I have a YouTube where I do archaeology and history related content educating people. I've been to Boy Scout troops where I've educated them on archaeology. I've been to my son's schools. And actually, most of the time, I'm actually well received. and believe it or not, I don't actually get that much question about dinosaurs as I used to. But yeah, but I've done that, and it's like, and it works, and like a family friend of mine who used to be used to be the state archaeologist for Wyoming back in the 90s. And he was talking about like how he would try to do it is, Wyoming being a huge area of ranch land, is he would uh basically educate and enlist the ranchers in protecting the archaeological sites on their ranch lands. Because in many ways, like he's like, we're state archaeologists, and we're underfunded and and undermanned. So if we can get these guys who are already super protective of their private property to be super protective of the archaeological sites on said private property, it can work. And a lot of times it works. It happens in Montana too. I mean, there's a archaeological site, a petrichor site sacred to the Blackfoot Nation, that these ranchers have been protecting for decades, and have worked with the Blackfoot Nation to build a museum there, and they protect it very well. There's here on the coast of Georgia, in Savannah and other places, there are very strong initiatives to work with the Gullah Geechee people and protect archaeological sites and such. So we know that that works. It's just it's also difficult to do that because sometimes it can be difficult to get the people to sit and listen as well, and it's also hard to tell whether or not they're going to actually listen or whether or not they're humoring you in the moment, in my experience. So,
Well, in the when one is dealing with stakeholders, you need to find out
yeah,
what their interest is.
yeah, exactly,
And
yeah,
so when you talk about ranchers really caring about who is on their land,
yeah,
that's their interest. Most landowners don't like trespassers.
no,
And
yeah,
so, one of the strategies that, talking to one of my colleagues here in Kentucky who works for the NRCS, I mean, he works with farmers and ranchers. That's
hmm,
pretty much exactly only who he works with. And, if they buy into being stewards of the land, which includes,
hmm,
ranch land, cropland that supports their families, so on and so forth, then then you do have allies, people who care about the historical resources, as part of their land. And then, of course, you have people who own land and just happen to have archaeological sites, but they care about the history.
yeah,
And, it's also theirs.
yeah,
And they
Mhm.
don't
Yeah.
want other people going
yeah,
onto their land and, digging into their site. And that reminds me of a story I have from my CRM days working down in Pasco County, Florida. There's a
yeah,
uh, silicified coral quarries down
hmm,
there, and artifact collectors love to go dig on those. But there
yeah,
was a rancher, when in some of the more undeveloped lands in Pasco where he had cattle, and he, on more than one occasion, when he like goes and checks his cattle, he'll do it on horseback. He won't do it on ATVs or quads or trucks, and he sneaks up on the looters. And he related a story where he and his sons, like like Jurassic Park raptored these looters, where they came up on them on three
oh
sides.
shit, yeah,
And these were the kind of ranchers who carry long guns and
yeah,
sidearms with them. They go
Yeah.
out there on their land on
I'm
horseback.
seeing that episode from
yeah,
Yellowstone.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just you can dig your own grave.
yeah,
Yeah.
But he's actually caught and detained people on his property because
yeah,
it's his land. And if one of his beef critters falls into a
yeah,
looter hole and breaks its leg, that's $2,000, $3,000
yeah, gone,
Yep.
that
yeah,
he's out, and he's got to
yeah,
put the animal down.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yep.
So stakeholders, in combating looting, the landowners on whose land it happens, are
yeah.
a good line of defense. On public lands, good
Secrecy.
luck.
Yeah, well, secrecy,
It's
yeah,
secrecy.
It's tough fight.
We
secrecy,
don't talk about the
well,
Yeah.
locations of sites.
yeah,
Yeah,
this
We
is why,
have
yeah,
whenever I talk about or publish an article or post something on
yeah,
Academia EDU, I have to redact the
yeah,
locations of stuff. That's
Yeah.
just kind of what I have to do.
yeah,
But 2 years ago, there was, so on the local NPR station, there's a thing called Off the Beaten Path.
yeah,
And it's all these kind of neat little things that you can do in Kentucky, smallmouth bass fishing on kayaks
yeah,
in Elkhorn Creek. But was it July 2023, one of the off the beaten path segments was artifact collecting.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ooh.
as you can, I mean, but this wasn't what we would call looting. This is somebody getting permission from a landowner to go walk in their tobacco patch and go surface collecting artifacts. And
I mean, unfortunately, that's legal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's legal and is probably one of the least problematic. I mean, a lot of these things are already out of context anyway. They're on the surface. They're not digging around. But I'm on vacation in Naples, Italy, and I get a message from the archaeology section coordinator in Kentucky saying, "Hey, can you talk to these people?" Meaning the guy who records and airs the segments. And so I was messaging back and forth with this guy. I was sitting in the People's Plaza in Naples, talking to this guy on my cell phone. And so when I got back, we went out to the sites that I've worked at with Forest Service personnel and this guy, and we're taking video, we're giving interviews, and it also aired as a counterbalance to this. Look how fun collecting artifacts is. Well, here's the dark side. Here's my rock shelters that are looted out. Giant craters in them, and I made the analogy of, take your favorite book and then find your favorite word in your favorite book and then clip it out and then throw away the book.
Yeah.
Here's your cool spear point. Here's your neato piece of pottery. What does it mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like
exactly.
Salubrious. Great word. Yeah. Sounds fun.
Yeah. But what is it? Yeah. Exactly.
Where in a sense did that fall? And so the analogy that I made is that, to understand the past and appreciate it more fully, you have to have the context. And if all you have are pointy, pretty rocks, that, I mean, I love them. I love lithics. Lithics make me happy. I get really excited about lithics.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
But
there's a lot more that goes along with it. And without it, you're getting a very, very narrow view that sure, we can talk about the craftsmanship of an artifact and how nice it looks and the flaking patterns and what have you, and that's it.
That's it.
You don't get much further than that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that's a very good point. And like one of the things I've done here in Georgia, because of course here in Georgia, much like say in Kentucky, there are a lot of Civil War battlefields that are national. And one of the things that I've tried to get across to people, and for a period of time, I was calling and pestering my representatives, and one of and every time I would do it about, historic sites, and I'm like, look, among these things that are getting destroyed are, and of course I ardently fight against the lost cause and I debunk it in every way I can. But, when I'm talking to people like this, I sort of play into their mindset. I'm like, you're destroying our heritage, air quotes that way. It's like if we care about our heritage, our Southern heritage, we need to protect these things too. These things are being looted too. And that seems to be sort of, I'm not the only one who's doing that. And that seems to be working to some degree because now the Battlefield Trust is trying to increase protections on Civil War battlefields in Georgia. But that's another way to do it as well, is to, like in the South, like, hey, if you want to protect the pride of the Confederacy, air quotes, you got to protect the fucking battlefields too. Looting them destroys what you believe in.
And you're connecting with a stakeholder community.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So finding out what's important to that particular segment and using that as your entree into why you shouldn't be.
Yeah, because exactly.
I mean, listen, social media, right?
Yeah.
I am both amazed and horrified by the pay per dig sites. There's several that I follow in Florida and in Texas and other places. But I also, will sometimes, because I've skewed my algorithm this way, I get the metal detectorists and they talk about, we saved this part of history. We saved this bit of history.
Yeah.
Like, saving to you is erasing for others.
Yeah.
You saved it for you that day and it's gone for
and how?
It's gone for
how are they saving?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's one of the things that I've pointed out when calling out people who are looting things
Hmm.
is this takes more than, oh, I found it and I'm taking it home. You
Yeah.
know, I've seen metal detectorists take those rusty chunk of metal and drop it in a pot of boiling vinegar.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Cool. And then they get this pocket knife and you can visibly see it starting to rust again and
Yeah.
Mhm.
breaking down because all of that the protective concretion on top they've
Yeah.
removed, they've exposed it to oxygen and now it's
Yeah.
coming apart. The
Mhm.
Yeah.
canoes that people have found,
Yeah.
they're gonna
Oh,
take, there's I did a whole like 2 or 3 videos on a shipwreck that
yeah.
was in what, Mississippi or something, that during COVID the water dropped down low enough and it was a 19th century ship,
Hmm.
and in like 3 months it was gone
Yeah.
because people showed up and they're sawing chunks out of the keel blocks and
Yeah.
taking it home, and it's like that is going to start to mold
Decay.
and disgust
Mhm.
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
your living room. What are
Yeah.
you doing to protect that? Here's
Mhm.
a laundry list of things that go into actually preserving artifacts,
Yeah.
and people don't seem to understand that, once you find it, well, now it's like it's almost like finding a kitten
Yeah.
and taking it home. Now you have a responsibility.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You don't get to just, and leave it. Lithics
Yeah.
and bottles and stuff like that, that's like relatively stable stuff.
Yeah.
But metal, wood,
Unless
animal
you're,
fibers,
yeah.
bone,
Yeah.
Yeah.
wood objects, that stuff doesn't survive. That takes an
No.
immense amount of care.
Yeah.
Mhm.
On top of that, and I like this about the historic stuff because when people loot
Hmm.
historic things, I have to laugh because if I know what it is,
Yeah.
go ahead, loot it, and come to me when you're sick. You know,
Yeah.
I had somebody take candles out of a
Oh.
display at Garnett.
Oh no.
Cool. They put them in their pocket
Uh-huh.
and they're walking around with these candles in their pocket. It's hot, it's about 100 degrees. They're sweating. This person had to be airlifted
Ooh.
because they
Oh.
could not figure out what was wrong with him. And it was the fact that he had taken a slow burn chemical candle
Hmm.
that goes on your lantern and is chemically designed to burn at a fixed rate of speed.
Yeah.
This stuff, they stopped using it because it gave you cancer when you breathed in the fumes.
Yeah.
This guy put it on his thigh, separated by a little patch of fabric, and then
Hmm.
his body temperature started to melt the candle.
Hmm.
And this guy had a horrendous chemical reaction
Mhm.
Yeah.
because he tried to steal an artifact.
Yeah.
But I've seen people cut the old uh wallpaper
Yep.
out of old structures
Yeah.
and they take it home and they have it in their house and they handle it. It's like, guys, that the fixative for that is arsenic.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
yeah.
you're handling stuff with mercury on it. This is
Mhm.
why your brain rots.
Yeah.
And
I've seen
when
people
people
work
loot
with
things like that, it's like,
munitions.
oh yeah, the
Yeah.
munitions. Holy
Yeah.
cow.
Yeah, like there was that one person who found an unexploded an exploded mortar and was just
Uh-huh.
like digging it out. Like that we did the video response time. We're like,
Oh, the
what are you
Panzerfaust.
doing? Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, all kinds of things. And it's just like they don't think things through. I've seen videos of people looting like asbestos laden artifacts, and I'm just like, you
Mhm.
realize what you're doing? Like you're looting something from the
And
30s, what do you expect? Yeah.
and that's part of the catch 22 of educating
Yeah.
about this, because we do need to educate
Yeah.
in respect to the importance of cultural history, the importance of
Hmm.
site integrity, all up and down the board. Not only, hey, we're going to lose a bunch of data if we dig this
Hmm.
stuff up. How about the fact that if you dig that site up, it loses integrity. Now the landscape has no integrity
Yeah.
for this purpose, and now they can build a parking lot on it, or
Yeah.
they can level it for a highway or something like that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's the stuff. That stuff is important, but then there's also the health and safety part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, it breaks down into once this is gone, there is no getting it back.
Yeah.
That's one of the ironies of our job is that
Mhm.
we strive so much to learn things. Archaeology destroys archaeological sites. We
Yeah.
cannot put the sites back together again once we dig them
No.
up. And, we combat that by endless and endless chapters and
Yeah.
notebooks full of notes that maybe 3 people can decipher and reports that are 1,000 pages long that no one wants to read, but at the very least the data is still there.
Yeah.
If people loot stuff and go,
Yeah.
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 The other thing that we need to educate on, and this is just something that I might as well wish for a unicorn or an alligator that flies at this point, is, pardon my language, basic fucking humanity.
Yeah.
Because and like Mary's seen this with her stuff because she's
Yeah.
seen burials on our on construction sites. I
Yeah.
just did a thing on some burials
Yeah.
that were found on a construction site
Yep.
where you have people go literally can't understand or wrap their heads around being respectful.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if someone says, "Hey, we don't allow pictures being taken of dead bodies." Doesn't matter if they're 2 days old or 2,000 years old.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Culturally, this is a taboo. Can we not do this? And people are like, "Well, my culture doesn't believe that."
Yeah.
Or, the basic humanity of respect.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's like I said, I should wish for a flying
Yeah.
unicorn alligator because how do we teach this? When we
Yeah.
talk about looting, so many people come back with oh, they lost.
Yeah. Or they were
Oh, no one
conquered.
cares.
Yeah. They were
Well,
conquered.
I
Yeah.
don't give a shit about being
Or
respectful to the laws, let
yeah.
alone
Yep. I've heard I've
You
heard the
know,
phrase. Somebody told
the
me once. It's like, oh, it's a stupid law, and I'm gonna keep not listening to
yeah.
it. It's like, okay, well, there's no point in me considering continuing this conversation.
I
Or
think
yeah.
lots of laws are stupid.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
5 Chinamen can't get together in a group in Montana.
Yeah.
That's a law. It's on the books. 3
Nobody.
Indians constitutes a war party, and you can't drive with a gorilla in the back of a Cadillac in Ohio. Stupid laws.
See, and
But
those. Yeah.
there's a reason why those
Yeah.
laws came about, good or
Mhm.
bad. In this
Mhm.
case, what we're dealing with is these are here to prevent the loss of X,
Yeah.
whatever. And the fact that so many people just, well, it's not that big of a deal. And that goes back to kind of our issue when it comes to looting doesn't get punished, but
Yeah.
theft does.
Yeah.
Because, and this is a back and forth. I've got 11 ARPA cases on my desk right now
Yeah.
on my forest
Yeah.
dealing with stuff, 3 of which are actual looting.
Mhm.
And one of the things that my program lead was like, it's probably never going to go anywhere. And that's because the judge used to collect arrowheads when
Of
he was a
course.
kid.
Yeah.
Or, it was not that big of a deal to go
Yeah.
up to the old ghost towns and dig up bottles
Yeah.
out of the dumps and stuff. So
Right.
you have like this, oh, it's not that bad.
Mhm.
Oh, it's not a big deal. Why are we acknowledging, or why are we making it a big deal? Except for the fact that if we don't make it a big deal,
Mhm.
it's going to continue.
Yeah.
And it's just going to snowball because today it's an arrowhead, tomorrow it's a cavalry saber out of some Union soldier's burial,
Yeah.
to something else, to peeling up Hollywood stars.
Yeah.
Or, destroying the entire wing of a historic building that's on the National Registry and
Yeah.
run by the Park Service.
Or
Oh,
making a statement on the news saying that what happened to the Native Americans and what continues to happen to Native Americans is justified because child sacrifice.
Oh my God.
Before
JD
leading
Vance running.
before going into a tangent about archaeology and brothels for some fucking reason
Whatever.
that was not connected at all to the Native American thing.
Doc, have you
either.
heard this yet?
I heard about the child sacrifice.
Yeah.
No, he went
JD
yeah.
Vance's thing was he went on a tangent
Yeah.
about child burials and burials of women around brothels. That was
Yeah.
like his tangent of they found child sacrifice. Archaeological evidence shows that at brothels you have this. It's like
What, like, okay, like, well, yeah, and
no, you don't.
yeah,
They're buried in the cemetery.
yeah, yeah, but that's my point. It's like, and one of the points I brought up is like, okay, well, even if that was the case, like, an infant's remains doesn't equal abortion. It could be like Morgan, you brought this up in your video too. You and I brought up the same thing in separate videos independently, where it's like, okay, but what about died in childbirth, disease, you
Mhm.
know. I was like,
No.
Maybe the kid fell down the stairs and cracked their fucking skull.
Child
Like,
mortality until like
yeah,
1935 was
yeah.
40%.
Mhm.
But the point is like it had no, it was like random. He was like, they found widespread child sacrifice, and then seamlessly he moves into something that's completely unrelated to Native American. And we're like, what? I mean, like one that's also horrible, but like that's a weird like continuation of the story. But yeah,
He
it's
was
bad.
connecting
Probably
dots
was
that were like
distracted.
this.
Yeah, he was
You know?
like, yeah,
He was
he was,
distracted because Erica Kirk was there dressed as a
yeah,
couch.
yeah, no.
Sorry.
No,
Not sorry, but
he was acting like that scene of Charlie Day with the beautiful mind board, you know, like, yeah, but yeah, it's like it's just it snowballs and like,
it does.
yeah,
And
which
it also
actually,
snowballs to more people. Like if
yeah, more people, yeah,
every single looter who's like, oh, it's just one artifact or it's just me or
yeah.
whatever. No, it's not just you and it's not just one. It's
Nope.
thousands of people who are doing the exact same thing that you are doing.
And the
So
thousands of people who are going to
Mhm.
see the thousands of people doing it.
Well,
exactly. And
and
the more you put it
yeah.
out there, the more you encourage others to do it.
Well, and the thing is, it's not just them either, because
Mhm.
as we've all seen on Facebook or on other places, there are entire like looting groups,
Groups. Yeah.
and it's like if you're not doing it by your fucking self, stop,
Yeah.
and also like on the education thing, there it can be a double-edged sword because sometimes they just will willfully not fucking listen. To go back to what I alluded to way earlier about the fucking canoe. Dr. Andino, to explain this, so there was this guy on TikTok who at first seemed like he listened to archaeologists. He said he was in somewhere in Missouri, and he's like, "Oh, I think I found this canoe." He's like, "I've been told to contact archaeologists." He's like, "Can you?" He's like, "Can anybody tell me who to contact?" And we're all like, "Contact the shippo or something along those lines." And he claimed that he did, and he claimed that somebody from the shippo came out and said, "No, it's not a canoe. It's a tree that's just ironically shaped like a canoe." In fact, in the video, you can still see the root mat attached to it.
Mhm.
Well, a couple months later, suddenly he decided it is a canoe, and the archaeologists are lying through their teeth, and he's trying to act like he knows more than archaeologists. And now he's saying that it wasn't the state archaeologist; it was some young archaeologist from a university that came out, and Morgan and I mean, Mary got involved, got in there, had addressed him as well a little bit, but it was mainly Morgan and I. We were like, "Hey, shut up! You don't know what you're talking about. One, it's not a canoe. Two, even if it was a canoe, you're saying the archaeologists didn't come get it." Maybe they thought it was too fragile or any number of things, and eventually,
Also, where are they going to put it?
yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then,
in the middle of our curation crisis
Yeah.
that we have in this country right now.
yeah. Well, it's not even that. Morgan, you saw this too, where he tried to claim, oh, they said that they don't know what they're talking about because they claim that, the water hollowed out the canoe and water doesn't hollow out wood by following the grain or some shit like that. And we're all like, that's when I worked. Me right here, the host of this video, I worked for a couple of years in a wood shop. I have very good friends who've worked for decades in a wood shop, and we are all, and it's like, it does.
Isn't the
Yeah.
outer part of the tree under
Yeah.
the bark the
Yeah.
hardest part of the tree?
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
inside, which has
Well,
all the moisture going through it, is the
Yeah.
softest part of the tree.
Well, I sent that I photoshopped that comment and I sent it to one of my friends who works in a wood shop. I'm like, look what this motherfucker is claiming, and he's like, what the fuck is he talking about? That's not. Yes, it
I
hollows
saw
out
that
trees.
he was.
Yeah,
I saw that he was focusing on a spot that was
Yeah.
broken at like it was
Yeah.
perpendicular to the length
Yeah.
of the tree. And
yeah.
I'm like, you've never seen a cottonwood split
Yeah,
perpendicularly
yeah.
in the sun?
Yeah, and he was also claiming
Because-
that he had the same materials that archaeologists use to stabilize wooden artifacts that have been. I'm like, sure you do, dude. Whatever.
What?
Yeah, like a pressure
What?
tank is what he
Because-
claimed. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah, where?
yeah, that was what
I have a whole
thought.
garage. I'm not bringing home a 12
Yeah,
foot.
I know. That's what I
I'm
said.
sorry.
Yeah, that's what I said. Well, anyways, but also I contacted, so I took it upon myself. I'm like to contact the state archaeologist of Missouri, and I was like, hey, this guy and I explained the whole thing. I was like, for one thing, I don't think it's an actual artifact. I just want some clarification on whether or not somebody actually came out to this guy's thing. And and I talked to the state archaeologist and the state archaeologist in charge of historic sites, and both of them were like, yeah, we have no idea who this guy is. I
Mhm.
contacted the state museum, no idea who the guy is. And so basically, I'm contacting all these archaeologists who are the most likely people who have been out there. Nobody knows who this guy is. He's on their radar now, so
Good.
because he was, as Morgan can attest, he was beginning to promote looting activities to other people. But yeah, so so they know who he is now. But they were like, yeah, no, we've never been out to his site. We've never heard anything about Canoe. And I asked him, like, yeah, so is what he's saying that, like, I've never heard that with, preserving a canoe, because I've never actually preserved a canoe, but I know people who have, and like I asked them the same thing, and they're like, yeah, no, that's not how that works. I'm like, that's what I thought. But yeah, but like the point is, we educated this person and we thought we got through to him, and then suddenly he did a 180 and was like,
Mhm.
y'all are wrong, you're stupid, I'm right. He's also a, Trump supporter and, all kinds of things, so it doesn't
No,
surprise me.
really?
Yeah. Because he
Not
was
that
like,
all of them are,
yeah,
but
yeah. So there is that. It's a double-edged sword because
most
you can
of.
educate them, but it may not always stick, unfortunately.
Right.
And so
A
there is
bunch of the
that.
sticking
Yeah,
centers on the treating of people with respect
yeah,
Mhm.
and that's and
and
yeah, and as
based
we,
on
yeah,
ethnicity or religion or both,
yeah,
or simple detachment.
yeah,
And that I feel is something that people need to know a little bit more about their own
yeah,
history
mm,
because we are in this wonderful nation of immigrants.
yeah, it,
90% of the population here are descended from or are, relatively recently, I'm going to say relatively recently
mhm,
being within the last 100 years,
yeah,
immigrants.
yeah,
Well, apply anything that's being said in respect to indigenous sites, African American sites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to your own history.
hmm,
Mhm.
You know, things that are made illegal, things that are made that have been tried to be destroyed. You
hmm,
couldn't wear a kilt or carry a claymore or play the bagpipes in Scotland for a very, very, very long time
hmm,
because they are culturally significant things. They are a rallying point
hmm.
for your heritage and that little message in the back of your head saying, fuck the king, we don't need him. He's not our king. We have our own culture, our own identity, and he's not part of it. That has been going on in every single country
hmm.
across the planet. And when people get to the United States of America, there seems to be this very unique moment of it's gone. You have
Yeah,
no connection to that.
Mhm.
yeah,
And if they're going to have no connection to that, they start at zero with what the Constitution says, and what this country is founded on. If they're going to have a connection to that, they need to acknowledge that,
yeah,
which then they would have a point of reference to understand.
yeah,
Okay, I get it. And I've
yeah,
said this in a bunch of my other videos too. You don't need to get it.
hmm,
You need to acknowledge it
yeah,
Mhm.
and then, you know, follow it. You don't need to get why people don't take pictures of burials. If you want to take pictures of your culture's burials or your ancestors' burials, fine. I'm
yeah,
not going to stop you. If someone says don't take a picture of mine, my heritage, my whatever, be respectful. You don't have to go, well, I do it. You don't have to acknowledge it or you don't have to understand it. You don't have to like it,
yeah.
but you have to acknowledge it because you are,
Hmm.
contrary to what your mother says, not that special.
No, yeah.
So are you wanting these people to have empathy? Is that what you're saying?
Empathy, that's that, oh,
Oh,
that's that naughty, naughty word, that
yeah,
naughty, useless word,
that's the toxic word
the
the
toxic
toxic new
word.
age word. Yeah,
Mhm. It's ruining our culture.
yeah. Well, and yeah, jeez. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which I guess it brings us really, all this brings us to, like, I guess, our next section. What are some other methods we could use to potentially use to combat this or to educate people and such? Um, Dr. Nadina, I know that in our conversation leading up to this, you said you had some ideas. What would you suggest?
Don't be afraid to, as apparently you're doing,
Yeah,
get in the public view and,
yeah,
say the things that need to be said. Like, you shouldn't go onto public lands digging for artifacts because you're stealing from everybody.
yeah,
Taking that arrowhead, it's like, oh, who cares? There's an arrowhead. It's like, well, the next thing you know, there's a
hmm
reason that they don't like you taking rocks out of the rivers and smoking them
yeah,
out in national park. Because
yeah,
if everybody brings a rock home,
Yep.
there's no more riffles. There's
yeah,
no more runs.
Yep.
Anywhere
yeah,
there's public access,
Or
there's
if you stack the
rocks.
rocks.
yeah,
Or stack them and wetland ecologies and so on and so forth. But yeah, so when I have an opportunity to do it, I am apparently now that person that they contact, the SHPO's office and
yeah,
the I was like, hey, do you mind talking? It's like, sure, I'll do it.
yeah.
I'll talk about it. I've done that twice.
Mhm.
And then I think the other thing is, if there are, in your capacities as archaeologists, if there are public outreach events, like
Yeah.
Kentucky, we have Living Archaeology Weekend.
Yeah.
We get 1,000 school kids and like several hundred parents coming through, and just the general public.
Yeah.
And we have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody at every moment, but there's the
Yeah.
Kentucky Archaeology Survey, the Kentucky Heritage Council.
Yeah.
We're there explaining, what we do, and sometimes why we shouldn't go digging for artifacts.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, in my capacity as a professional, not everybody can do this because of limitations on what you can and cannot do in your after hours related to archaeology, depending on what agencies or institutions you work for. But one of the things that I do is I get to, I field a lot of calls and emails about, hey, I found some bones on my property. What are they?
Yeah.
I've done several of that, and on a couple of occasions, the SHPO's office has asked me to go out and check out reports of looted sites, including one rock shelter where a granddad and his grandkid were digging for arrowheads, and they found 2 burials.
Yeah.
Oh,
And they brought the stuff home, and they're washing it in Mima's sink, and Mima's looking at the stuff they have drying on the tea towels, and it's human teeth.
Oh shit.
And Mima's like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
So because that is outside the purview of the SHPO's office, it's on private land. It doesn't involve Section 106 assessment. So I go out and do that. So insofar as you can do those kinds of things, you can do those kinds of things. And recently, with that incident of the artifact collecting as a hobby news piece, one of the questions that I got asked by the host of that show is, well, what advice do you have for people who want to collect artifacts? And the first thing I said was, get permission. If you're not, don't do it on state land. Don't dig for things. And if you're picking up artifacts out of a tobacco patch on your neighbor's, a stranger's land, whatever it is, record where your stuff comes from.
Yeah.
Because an unprovenience collection is of minuscule use, but as archaeologists in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina have demonstrated, even county level provenience can provide useful archaeological data.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing now.
Like sub county.
And that's
got Google Maps. So
and that's what I'm doing now. Actually, with some of the artifacts, with approaching, friends and family, I'm like trying to recover as much provenience, and context as possible. Because for one thing, fortunately, the PPKs and projectile points they have the bases intact, so they're dateable, or potentially dateable. So it's like cool. And so, and they know they don't know the exact area, but they know the rough area of where they got them. So I'm like, okay, so I know what county, what rough area of the county they got it from, and I can date these projectile points. And now we're scanning the projectile points to determine, or hopefully determine their source. So we can get to some data on that. They'll tell us like, oh, we know that this is a early woodland or archaic or a middle woodland, whatever, projectile points in this county along this rough area, and now we know what stone material they were using to make them. So now that tells us more about how they were utilizing resources in the area. and such. And on archaeological societies, that's something I've done a lot over my life. Like, I know the site archaeologist for here in Georgia, Fort Frederica, and also St. Mary's Island, and they do yearly like archaeology days and field schools for middle through high school students to teach them on proper archaeological context and education, and to teach them the importance of archaeology. Every year I go to a historic site in Georgia for their archaeology day, and I do presentations, and I man booths, and I educate people on the importance of archaeology and things like that. So I think those are all very useful ways to handle that.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
made my piece years and years ago that anybody who wants to click an artifact, I'm not going to change their mind.
No, of course, yeah.
999,000 out of 100,000, I'm
Yeah.
probably not going to change their mind. But at least I can offer some advice that might make their collection useful in some capacity when their grandchildren don't want their stupid old rocks.
Yeah,
and they want to
exactly.
throw them away or give them to the Goodwill. It's like, donate it to the archaeologists at the university or the museum.
Yeah.
And I'm in a situation now where I have a former student whose papa died, and now he's got 3 5-gallon buckets full of PPKs and other tools that have come off of the family farm and other miscellaneous places. And how do you untangle that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so which actually I think leads well into what me, Morgan, and Mary have been doing, among other people, using social media to try to hamper this. So Morgan, to be fair, has been doing this the longest of all of us. He was like addressing people's videos and telling them, hey, don't fucking loot archaeological sites. During COVID, yeah. Where I got started is, so I had never seen this individual. Morgan talked about him earlier in the video, but this individual on on TikTok by the tag Endless Search was displaying himself looting archaeological sites, in a construction site for that matter. So it was he was violating a multitude of laws, and he and his girlfriend were also filming themselves using super glue to piece together pieces of pottery, which of course will lead to the corrosion of pottery. But anyway, so I made my video response, and I tried to approach him nicely, like, hey, yada yada yada, this is the correct provenience. And then of course he immediately blocked me. And then a mutual friend of Morgan's, Mary's, and I, she was the second person to hop on because I tagged her in the video, and she also tried to do it the friendly way, and the guy came back and said, quote, she's a ginger bitch. And then that led to more people hopping on, and eventually it led to all of us collaborating to essentially try to figure out any way we can hamper this person's activities, which up until recently worked. We
talked to his archaeology professor.
He
volunteered at.
Yeah, talked to the museum he volunteered at. I'm the one who personally called his archaeologist. Yeah,
4 or 5 different state shippos.
Yep, and state archaeologists, because there's
videos of him.
Yeah, along the
scuba diving.
Yeah, along
and
multiple
looting
rivers.
Artifacts.
Yeah,
and it's great because he's standing there in his scuba gear and they're showing off all their cool stuff, and the National Park sign is in the camera behind them.
Yep, and those were in Georgia.
The ones that are like, oh, by the way, no artifact collecting.
Yeah,
because
and those two were specifically in Georgia, and so because I was in Georgia, I handled all the Georgia stuff. Everyone else handled other and I forget like what other bits we handled because it was several years ago, but like each of us had our own part, but we dealt with it. I was the one who specifically called the professor and the museum, and of course the professor couldn't say outright that she was his professor because of legal issues, and I was like, that's fine. I was like, the way I approached it, I was like, I understand that you can't legally say, however, I will say that this individual is claiming that he's an archaeology student at this university, and he is filming himself looting artifacts on federal land. And she on the phone as she was talking with me on the phone, looked up his stuff, and she's like, "Oh," she's like, "We will handle this." And then she called me back, and she's like, "Yeah, we're going to there's going to be serious academic stuff going on with him, yeah, academic consequences." And I called, people called the state SHPOs in like South Carolina and North Carolina. I called the state archaeologist and the state archaeologist over the archaeologists over state historic sites in Georgia, and he disappeared basically for a while. It seemed
Yeah,
like.
I mean, I saw the video on Facebook, which of course is the
Yeah.
worst place to be.
Yeah.
Um,
But there was that, there was and there's multiple other examples. We did that quite a few times, and had people sort
the
of
Russian
disappear. The
archaeologist.
Russian archaeologist, oh my God, yeah. The Russian archaeologist, that was an interesting one. There was a different individual who was involved with that. So independently, I and this archaeologist in Norway. Stefan, who's also part of this organization that we informal organization we created, like he called, so a Russian archaeologist claiming he worked with the
He
archaeologist
called the
at
Muskogee,
he claimed he was working with the Seminole Nation,
or
and
the Seminole.
and Stefan called the archaeologist of the Seminole Nation the state SHPO,
No,
TIPO.
he called the first person
Yeah,
that this kid name dropped,
yep,
who was not even involved in the Seminoles
Yep.
cultural program, because
Yeah.
all this kid did was go on the website and go, "This
Yeah.
guy looks important."
Yep. And then I called the state archaeologist, and I didn't expect to hear anything back from the state archaeologist. Well, lo and behold, Stefan and we get a call about a week later, and the state archaeologist, she's like, "Hey, is this Dane Roberts?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was about to go camping. It was hilarious. I was just getting stuff to go camping, and I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well," and she explains who she is, and she's like, "I want to thank you for notifying us on his activities and giving us the stuff." And she's like, "Yeah, he's on our radar now, and the state law enforcement involved with archaeology is on its tail." And this was several years ago at this point.
Good.
So it's like, and then she sort of, and then she also sort of, she's like, in a few years, if you want to join the state SHPO, there's a job." So I'm like, cool. So I also kind of got a job
Move to
offer.
Florida.
Yeah, no, I'm not moving to Florida. Sorry, Dr. Andino. I know you're from Florida.
It's fine. I wouldn't live there again either.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but like, and we've had multiple successes of this where it's like, we've been able to, at the very least, put people on the radar that weren't originally on the radar of the SHPO and other stuff. Like people who've said that they looted federal sites. We also put them. We sent word to
because they
to the FBI and such.
Are filming their own.
Yep.
The evidence against their claims that they're not doing anything wrong.
And I'm the one who pointed this out to y'all because y'all aren't aware of this. Dr. Andino, you are. But Russian archaeologist was filming himself looting coral points, which are connected, and as you know, are connected to burial practices in Florida. So I was like, hey. Now, this doesn't mean that these points came from burial practices, because they could have just been a coral point. But the point is, there is that connection that we cannot, the possibility, and of course,
and until he shows the location and all of the other evidence that might still be intact or in situ, that it's not a burial, you operate on the
assumption.
Caution.
Yeah. Because they're connected to the Fort Center site in Florida, where there's a lot of coral points related to ceremonial and burial practices.
The guy who wrote that article, Bob Austin. Interesting about those Noonan points is that they had all the flake scars ground off of them.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though: they are separated. The Fort Center Pond and the Middle Archaic are separated by a few millennia.
Yeah.
So, unless you find them in a context like Fort Center, a point made of coral, it's like,
and that's why I said it's like
probably not mortuary associated. That's pretty pedestrian. That's like stone tool.
Yeah, and that's why
context is everything. If you grind all the flake scars off of it, smash it, and throw it in a charnel pond. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I said it's like we don't know for sure, because it could have been just a regular coral point, but
he's just digging for points.
Yeah. and that was the issue, is like we don't know what,
Oh,
yeah.
do you check the geolocations for the videos and the photos?
When we can,
Right.
Yeah,
sometimes they have them off because sometimes
yeah,
they're smart, sometimes they're not. A lot of times
yeah.
they're advertising where they are, and that's what's allowed us
Anymore,
to, yeah,
you can still get that back.
yeah,
For about the
yeah,
last 20 years or so, there's a
yeah,
couple in Kentucky who's been looting rock shelters. Tojo and Michelle. They have
yeah,
videos all over YouTube, and the Forest Service. They're pretty sure some of those sites are in Daniel Boone National Forest, and
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
they've been trying or hoping for years somebody would figure out who they are
yeah,
and start being able to tie some of these looting videos to specific rock shelters. But
yeah. Oh
You
it's
yeah.
tough.
gotta.
And I think that's another important thing to point out, is like when we're talking about this, like we know it's not perfect. We know we're not going to be able to completely stop it. We know we're not going to necessarily know where they always are, but an added tool in the toolbox, because unfortunately social media is also an added tool in their toolbox
Yep.
so
Yeah.
we have to sort of like devil's advocate. We're like, or you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, catch 22, whatever you want to say. We're using what we got, and that's, and we figured out pretty quickly that while not perfect, it is helping us actually make some degree of a dent. Because again, for a while, it seemed like for about a year, it seemed like looters, like they weren't completely gone, but it seemed like there were a lot less of them on
They
TikTok
got
and social media.
quiet.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
got quiet at the very least. Now they're sort of coming back again and sort of making that turn.
Mhm.
And so that's sort of the argument I made to a couple of my professors. I'm like,
All right.
where I'm just like, yeah, it's like it's never going to be the silver bullet that kills the werewolf that is archaeological looting, but it is a tool that I think a lot of people are sort of overlooking in a lot of
Hmm.
ways that we can use, and I think more archaeologists should use it,
Oh yeah.
definitely. Um, so. Do you have any thoughts, Dr. Indadino, on this?
I mean, like I said, I made my peace a long time ago that the looting is going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm probably not going to be able to stop it, but I will do what I
yeah,
can when I can
yeah.
to educate, to inform,
Mm.
and as part of my research, also to salvage,
Yeah,
the good, useful data from like heavily looted sites. The one I excavated in 2021 was like I think one of the worst I've ever worked at.
yeah.
It turns out I have a meter of early archaic deposits in a
Hmm.
rock shelter that I didn't expect to find. Oh, and three contact period Native American features
Cool.
that look like woodland, like hearths and pits. It's like, but the
Oh.
radiocarbon dates came back 1650 to
Cool.
1800 AD.
Wow.
Wow.
So
That's cool.
that was a shock.
Yeah.
And so now I have this, you know, are they Cherokee? Are they Shawnee? Are they another group
Could,
in Appalachia who were making use of the Cumberland Plateau?
I mean, they
Good
could,
question.
yeah.
So the next stage of research is unexpectedly contact period features is now talking with the Shawnee, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and potentially other groups to see
Yeah.
what do you all make of these things.
Yeah.
I got these in looted rock shelters.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not totally destroyed, but they're undoubtedly ancestral sites of groups who, were in this area, probably Shawnee.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Yeah. Then that's fair. I think so. And and last time we talked, Dr. Andino, you and I talked about that site. You mentioned that you were working up or trying to work up a sort of using that data, sort of I guess a plan to how to detect looter sites like that. Did you ever actually get around to doing that?
That is actually the work of a student at
Mm,
the Southern Illinois at Carbondale, who
hmm
was using a GIS approach to
hmm
looking at the factors that contribute to sites being looted, and to nobody's surprise, its proximity to like ingress and egress points, roads,
Yeah.
trails,
Yeah, that
that
makes
kind of thing. The
sense.
farther out you are, the less
Yeah.
likely to be looted.
Hmm.
But if you're near a road and
Doesn't
people
surprise
can get
doesn't surprise
there,
me at all. It doesn't
yeah.
surprise me at all. Yeah. So, yeah, because that was a question I wanted to ask because you had mentioned it at the time, but it had not been done yet. It
Mhm.
was a thought in people's minds. So I wanted to ask about that,
I'm
you know,
pretty
if
sure
you,
the thesis is done.
uh,
I saw them give a paper at the Kentucky Heritage Council
okay,
survey
cool. I'll look
meeting
for that.
last
Yeah.
year, and yeah, they essentially it's like, yeah, if it's near if it's near some kind of
Yeah.
corridor, it's
Yep.
probably gonna get looted. And the further you get from a corridor, the
Yeah. And
less
that's,
likely it becomes.
and of course, that's pretty much what I've seen it working in CRM and everyone else has
Mhm.
seen, where it's like the further out in the woods, it's not as likely, and you can pretty much tell,
Mhm.
you know, when
Yeah, the
it's
rock
been,
shelters are
yeah,
the easy ones to
yeah,
identify because they're just like recessed.
yeah,
All those ridge tops and those ridge
yeah,
saddle sites up on the high ground, it's like those almost never get looted
yeah,
because nobody's
yeah,
up there looking for them.
Because there's no
So
no,
sites up there.
yeah,
no, there's
yeah, yeah,
definitely no
Nope.
no
sites.
sights
No
ever,
Nothing.
sites up
yeah,
there.
No.
yeah, exactly.
We had a very entertaining thing with this with a looting event.
Hmm.
Um, we had the guy making faces at the game camera,
Oh, wow.
legitimately because he thought it was a game camera.
Okay.
And he's of course in full view looting an archaeological site that we've
Yeah,
set up the camera for. But he
yeah,
thought somebody was looking at the deer that frequent that little spot,
yeah,
which makes me laugh. But that was
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, it's interest. It's always
There's no
interesting to
mistaking him.
encounter. Yeah, it's always interesting. Well, and of course, briefly going back, there's the guy that I ran into on that phase one who just was apparently so comfortable admitting that he looted all these things
Oh,
from.
my sister's
Uh,
ex-boyfriend
yeah, yeah,
flat was like, "Well, I got to show you all these points that I found." I was like, "You
yeah,
can't do that."
Yeah.
And
yeah,
his response was, which of course, this is one of the things is that we can't just blame
yeah,
the Republicans or MAGAs or people who support Trump for this
yeah,
because it can be anybody.
yeah,
He's just like, yeah, I don't give a shit.
yeah, yeah,
They're dead. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Their
yeah,
Yeah, we hear that
descendants
a
or
lot.
not. And two, the whole reason there's laws and regulations protecting these things
mm,
is because of you, because
yeah,
Mhm.
of people like you.
yeah,
Because because we point out it's not just one person, it's 1,000,
yeah,
and then it's every thousand, it's 1,000 who sees every, one person in that first 1,000. But I mean, the reason the laws exist is because of that inverse thing of it's
yeah,
thousands of people, because if it was one person, they wouldn't make a law.
mm,
You
Right.
know, it tracks back to the thing that my mom told me when I was a little kid, because we stopped at a rest area and I wanted to take home some of that volcano rock, the pumice that's in the landscaping.
yeah,
And I'm pretty sure this is because my mom didn't want more garbage in her car, but she told me no. And then I learned the valuable lesson. And she asked me this. I was like 8.
yeah,
If you take the rock home, is that rock going to be there? And I go, no. And she goes, if all the little kids who come through here take rocks home, do you think those rocks are still going to be there? And I go, well, no.
hmm,
Mhm.
They'll eventually run out. And she goes, yeah, so leave the rock.
Good for your
yeah,
mom.
yeah,
Holy
Good
crap.
lesson.
I learned it when I was 8, and it
yeah,
was it was not a hard lift to
Mhm.
yeah,
learn.
yeah.
Didn't
Mhm.
need a college degree, didn't need anything special.
Yeah,
Just
it's
needed my mom
yeah.
not wanting more crap in her car.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm, and I'm with Dr. Nadino. There are some people that I've just resigned to not even bother because like I know them, and that's why with the people I know, I'm just like, look, you're an adult, you're gonna do what you want. However, here's the reason why I think you shouldn't, and at the very least, mark where you got it down and explain, the very basics of what provenience and such is, because yeah, they're going to do what they want, anyways. But again, on the social media thing, at least we have this tool that we can at least in some way, as we've seen,
Right.
combat it, you
Mhm.
know. So there is that. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on this?
I would just say that I hope that maybe we can come up with an easier way for other people to maybe report looting, because that's something that I struggle with is people will come on social media and ask me, hey, I saw this, what do I do? Um, and yes, you can contact the state SHPO, but I feel like they have enough on their plate. They're not always going to get to a lot of those things. Um, And then, there's safehistory.org is a good website for things like that. And then it's also like you have to ask them questions like, well, do you know if it was on federal land or public land or state land or private land? Like, um, if there was a better way we could like streamline where people could report things, I think that could be helpful. But we might,
Everybody has one.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And taking points, taking pictures.
Mhm.
Don't approach people doing
mhm,
it. Well, I mean, we get told, the professional, my bosses flat say, don't approach anybody who's
right,
actually doing this because of A, B, and C, like we talked about earlier. It could be people looting sites for drug money.
Yeah.
They
mhm. Oh,
run
yeah,
armed, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a potential of somebody innocent going, oh, this is cool, and picking up an arrowhead. And then there's people who are like legitimately, they're breaking the law. They
mm,
know it. They're carrying a gun because they don't want any witnesses, or they feel the need that they have this idea they're going to, you know, whatever.
mhm,
But yeah. And then law enforcement.
yeah,
Contact law enforcement. Every
mhm,
single federal agency out there, Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Park Service, we all have archaeologists. We all have
Yeah.
law enforcement
right,
officers. If you can't get a hold of the archaeologist, you can get a hold of the lady in the office who will
Mhm.
mhm,
forward it to the archaeologist. There's at least one, most likely two. If it's anywhere remotely near tribal land, like around a reservation, call the tribe.
Yeah.
right,
Because if anything, the TIPO has the actual archaeologist cell number
Yeah.
for that federal land that's around there. Every single federal agency has these, until this administration destroys it all.
right. But I
But
even think like though, like giving somebody that many steps, sometimes they're just like, oh, that seems like too much. Like,
Yeah.
how are we going to deal with it? Like if we had one singular place where people could report stuff, and then
Yeah.
well,
get
then
that information out there.
then like the savehistory.org is the best
Yes,
is one of the best examples.
I use that one a lot. Hmm.
That's the equivalent of like the poaching phone number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
The
Yeah.
every state has their fish and game has a poaching toll-free number to call if you
Mhm.
see somebody poking a
Yeah.
deer with a
Right.
Yeah.
rifle out of season or something like that. You can just flat call it and say, "Hey, I saw this at
Yeah.
this. They're driving this."
Yeah.
And that will disseminate down to either forest law enforcement,
Mhm.
fish and game law enforcement, or just county law enforcement to get somebody out there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I'm really, really fond of is educating children, on the importance of archaeology, because their parents and their grandparents, they're set in their fucking ways. They're gonna do what they want. But if we can catch them early enough, and I do want to say aside, I guarantee you this is gonna be clipped at some point, and somebody's gonna try to claim I'm indoctrinating kids. I can already see it. But anyways, but if we can catch them early enough and educate them on the importance of archaeology and why it's important to protect the sites, then they can grow up into future stakeholders who protect it, which
Mhm.
goes back to the stakeholder conversation. I'm a big fan of that. I educate my kids on the importance of that. I've educated their classmates on that, and I keep doing that. Again, I have no way of knowing how well it's going to work in the long run, but I think it's one of the best ways we're going to have because they are, to use an overused term, they are the future and
Hmm.
they're the ones who are going to grow up. And if we don't get to them and teach them, hey, here's the correct way to do it, here's how to protect it, here's why it's important, then it's not going to ever be done. You know,
And
uh,
if you can get that into the K-12 curriculum,
yeah,
in
Right.
Mhm.
Kentucky, it's third grade, 10-year-old, 10-year-olds,
yeah,
8-year-olds, eight,
yeah,
8 to 10.
yeah,
Yeah.
When they come to that point in their curriculum and they learn about Kentucky history and archaeology, a lot of them come to the Living Archaeology Weekend to fulfill
yeah,
that
That's
educational
awesome.
criterion.
yeah,
And if, the SHPO, the
hmm,
TIPO, whatever professional organizations are in your state can lobby to have protection and responsible
yeah,
behaviors put in some small way, maybe the kids will remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
And yeah, maybe. And also another thing that this is a conversation that Mary and I, and a few other people had, about about this is like more people, more archaeologists, going into law to try to hopefully strengthen the laws in the United States to where, like say in Europe, I have friends who are archaeologists in Europe, and it's like, yeah, everything, regardless if it's on private land or not, public land or not, is protected by the state in terms of archaeological
Mhm.
resources. Uh, that's not that way here. Having more archaeologists try to go into law to eventually try to fix that, I think is another thing that at least needs to be considered. I'm not going to do it because I would hate myself if I tried to go through a law school, but I think that's something that people need to consider at least a little bit,
Yeah.
because we're never going to get past the specter of, oh, private land, unless somebody actually does the work to change the laws and
We might
strengthen
need
the
a
laws.
constitutional amendment
Yeah.
Oh,
for
Yeah.
for 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 that to happen, which
Yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
At this
foresee
point,
that.
I
Next
don't foresee that.
administration.
Not in this
Yeah.
administration. Well, if there's a next administration, anyways. Yeah. Yeah. So, so, um, so we're about to be finishing up, but with this all in mind, so I have had one of said archaeologists in England has actually put in a request for various archaeologists to do something. He's not the only archaeologist that had received this request, but he received a request from the uh from this like Lego STEM or STEAM class in Wisconsin of like
Mhm.
8th through 12th graders, uh asking specifically for archaeologists to respond about what their favorite archaeological fact, artifact, place, or person to help the public better understand archaeology is. Unfortunately, he's apparently the only one who respond of the archaeologists that was contacted who responded. So he has put in a request for other archaeologists to, provide something like that. I'm doing separate video with him tomorrow, on the same subject, but where I'm also going to address my, favorite one of those. But while we're here and talking about the importance of educating the next generation of the public, I thought might be a good idea to finish up at, for y'all to sort
yeah.
of offer that information up. So the question again to repeat is, what is can you share either your favorite archaeological fact, artifact, place, or person, or, multiples of these to help the public better understand archaeology?
Hmm.
And I'm going to start with who's all first on my screen, starting with Morgan. You go first.
Right on the spot.
Yeah.
That is a difficult question.
Yeah.
It is a difficult
That
question.
is that is one of those questions that I find almost impossible to answer because
Yeah.
my favorite archaeological fact or find differs day to day.
Yeah.
It depends on how I'm feeling.
It's true.
Yeah.
The I guess the statement, and of course I am forgetting her name, and I feel awful. Oh, Margaret Mead.
Yeah.
One of the first one of the questions that was asked to her, I want to say it was in like 1962 or
Yeah.
63, was what is the earliest evidence of civilization?
Yeah.
Which is an archaic and poorly thought out term nowadays anyway.
Yeah.
But the first evidence of civilization in archaeology. And she pointed out that some 15 or 16,000 years ago, there is a burial in a cave system where an individual had a healed femur fracture.
Hmm.
And a femur fracture being one of the biggest bones in the human body, at any point in time before that would have been a death sentence. Any animal in the animal kingdom gets a fractured femur, the survival is in the decimal points of a percent, because that is such a important long or a devastating long lasting injury that compromises your ability to do anything to take care of yourself. And she pointed out that this individual who was found in this burial had a healed femur fracture, which
Hmm.
means the community that individual lived in took the steps to care for an
Mhm.
invalid.
Hmm.
Now, it's very likely there's individuals from before that. It's not
Hmm.
it's not a, that's not the first time it ever happened in
Hmm.
history. But this surviving example of civilization, i.e., a community operating to take care of itself, the people in it, you know, like that, was the first bit of evidence for something that we kind of take for granted nowadays.
Mhm.
That is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things because the time period it comes out is in the 1960s. The individual who says it is a woman in a field that is predominantly
Mhm.
male, especially in the 60s,
Yeah.
is coming out with this very profound statement that humanizes the past, one, and connects us to it in a way that, oh, hey, I know what an arrowhead is versus the people who made the arrowhead and used it 3,000 years ago. No, I know somebody who's broken their femur. I know what a medical injury
Mhm.
does to set you back. So here's this ability to immediately connect to something that far in the past. Astounding to me. And
Yeah.
that's the one I'm gonna go with today.
I think that's
It'll
a
be
very good
different
one.
tomorrow.
Oh yeah, of course. Dr. Inadino, what do you
Oof.
same yeah, we're all having the same exact same thoughts. So
Yeah,
yeah.
this is yeah, depending on when I would ask this question, I could probably answer it differently. So, like favorite fact or person,
Favorite fact, artifact, place, or person to help the public better
artifact, place,
understand
or person. Mm.
archaeology.
Hmm.
And yet and we're all having the same exact thoughts, like
Okay.
pick,
I think
yeah.
I think I've got my person.
Uh,
So this may be unpopular with some archaeologists for legitimate reasons, but I'm going to go with Clarence Bloomfield Moore. And
mhm.
here's why I'm going with Clarence Bloomfield Moore, because he was an educated person who accidentally became an archaeologist. He
Yeah.
was, albeit the scion of a textile manufacturing family from Philadelphia, rich by any measure of the 19th century. But through his encounter as an outdoorsman with
Hmm.
shell mounds in the St. Johns River, he became interested in archaeology through hunting and fishing. And I imagine a lot of people connect to archaeology because they're out hunting or fishing and they find an
Hmm.
artifact.
Yeah.
Fun fact, that's how I became an archaeologist.
Yeah.
I grew up in Central Florida on a North Central, and
Hmm.
there was a lake that I lived on, and I found arrowheads as a kid. And
Yeah.
then at the right time in the right place, and at the age of 19, actually right before Thanksgiving break, 1992, I found a Levy point and a preform.
Hmm.
And I took archaeology anthropology class that next semester. Boom. So Clarence Bloomfield Moore, because he then went on to become probably one of the better amateur archaeologists of the 19th century. He has notebooks. Sometimes he took
There.
photographs and he published on almost every site he worked at.
Hmm.
And his collections are now in places like the the Museum of the American Indian and the
Yeah.
Smithsonian, among
Yeah.
others. So, that's my person that I'm going to go with as being my favorite person today. There
Yeah.
might be somebody else
Yeah.
later, but for that reason is that he inadvertently came to archaeology by being in the outdoors and encountering it like so many people do. But he had the intellectual curiosity,
Hmm.
and also the Harvard connections to contact the
Yeah.
Peabody
Of
curator.
course.
You know,
Yeah.
so but and today you can send an email.
Yeah.
You can send an email to the curator of the Harvard Peabody Museum. They may or may not respond, but you could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and funnily enough, a very similar thing. Only my how I got interested in archaeology is my dad and I were planting corn and we found a scraper. Uh, you know, only thing we ever found like that, while doing that. But so anyway, so Mary, same question. Of course, I'm assuming the exact conundrum that we're all feeling.
Yeah, it's not an easy
Yeah.
question to answer, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
mine will be both my favorite place and also a fact about that
Mhm.
place. My first job in archaeology was just outside of Cahokia, uh,
Oh, wow.
known as the largest city in North America prior to European contact.
Hmm.
Uh, And I think what really struck me was, when I went to go visit Cahokia for the first time, and you go to Monk's Mound, and it's just
Hmm.
it's huge and it's beautiful and it's amazing, and you climb it and you get to see the view. Um,
Yeah.
and then I learned afterwards that when archaeologists, dug into the mound slightly, they didn't dig up the whole thing, but when they dug into it and they looked at the profile of the mound, they could literally see the basketfuls of dirt that were
Yeah.
placed to make this humongous mound. I could see each of them in the profile. And I think it just speaks so much to the community and how like in sync they were, how they were like, yes, we need to build this mound. And just basketful by basketful, they built this just huge, magnificent part of the landscape. And like at the time, I was just like mind blown, because a lot of times you don't think about like each little step they took to build, a mound of
Hmm.
dirt, but that's a lot. It's a lot of work. That's a lot of effort. That's a
Hmm.
lot of community that it took to build that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see that in a lot of the mounds too.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's yeah, amazing stuff. So yeah, so I think those are all very good answers. Of course, I'm saving mine for tomorrow, but uh, still admittedly trying to think of which of the th of my favorite things I want to pick from.
Good
But
luck.
yeah, but but I think all of us sharing that, I think that speaks to essentially what we all agreed upon is that like public, educating the public and educating the next generation is the most important thing, and this is how we do it: is we share our all of our favorite things, all the most profound things
Right.
within archaeology,
And look at how
because
varied each of these
yeah,
answers
yeah,
were.
exactly, because so many people they think sit here archaeology and think of, unfortunately, think of people like Indiana Jones, or even though
Or
she
Nemesis.
or yeah.
There's
Yeah, or in his only three movies, anyways, or his the Tomb Raider games, even though she's not
Mhm.
an archaeologist, but they associate her with archaeology, and that's,
Right.
or again, I know I'm probably the only one here who's ever played them, but the Uncharted games, and again, not an archaeologist, but they associate him with archaeology in the game, so it's an issue. So I think this helps us sort of combat that to whatever little degree we
Right.
can, you know. So, all right. So, with that, I think very productive discussion. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. Of course, every now and again we have these discussions come up depending on what subject we want to discuss. And this is again, the point of this was say, hey, social media is a tool. We need to use it. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a tool in our toolbox. Put it right next to the drill and the hammer.
yeah.
Metaphorically.
Mhm.
Please don't actually use the drill and hammer.
Digging
But
with my phone.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But we need to put it in our metaphorical toolbox.
Mhm.
So again, thank you everyone for coming on. Hope you all have a good night, and everyone remember to give a like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a good day.